So the way I was saying, architecture made me who I am today. I see things differently, how they are proportional, how they're designed. Even when I walk to a room, I see everything in details. What it's not the problem is not like you see the right things. It's we pick up the wrong things. That thing should not have been there. That thing shouldn't be designed that way. That affects us in our social lives. People don't understand us because usually people think medicine, engineering, and everything was hard. But architecture, it needs more than talent. It needs more than passion. It needs commitment.
And it sounds like attention to detail is what you're describing.
Of course.
Everything, almost like a little bit like an OCD kind of thing. Like every little thing has to be in its right place and has to be functional and make sense. So you're saying architects are often misunderstood then, as you know, people don't realize the artistic side of it.
They're seen as like, okay, I don't know the English term, but in Amharic it's called Qoralio. They used to call us Qoralio.
What does that mean?
We take every little thing we find in the road or something, we made a model out of it. We're always carrying a lot of things in our hands. They think like, Qoralio, you guys are always with a lot of baggage. The baggage was not just metaphorical, it was literal. We're always seeing something wrong, like, you have to do this, we have to do that. If I see a bottle of water, I'll think of, like, I can use this bottle to do something, to design something.
Mm-hmm. Everything has functionality to it, everything has
a purpose.
Right, potential purpose. That's interesting. So you feel that you had this personality and it drew you towards architecture, or you stumbled personally? You stumbled on architecture sort of randomly and it brought this personality out of you, which is, or is it both?
See, when I was growing up, when I was a child, I was raised by a single mother. My mother has always said, like, go explore everything you wanted, go get it. It was never a limitation. If I wanted to be an artist, I wanted to draw. She buys me everything I need to draw. I was into sports. She got me anything I wanted. That pushed me to things that I didn't think I was capable of. That things I thought I was not required to do it. Like, I'm a girl. I cannot go into boxing. Like, I have to be like wushu or taekwondo or even circus. But no, you want it, go get it. That was my mom's motto. When I was in 11th grade, I saw this movie. I don't remember the title, but it was some medical thing, and I wanted to be a doctor instantly. I wanted that for myself. She pushed me to it, but since I was young, I couldn't go to college here. I had an SAT test. I applied for a scholarship. I couldn't go there because I was underage. So my second choice was going to a college in here. Here at Unity. I didn't go to government college. Unity, they only had civil engineering, architecture, and mining.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't go to mining. That was not me. I wanted to be an architect, but that's by some complication.
Why did you want to be an architect to begin with? What?
Because that was the choice that was given to me. Either I have to be an architect or a civil engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be an architect because it was more relatable for me.
Okay.
The art, structure, and it was a challenge.
And but so the rest of this personality that you're describing, or the way architects have to see the world, and this sort of neurotic focus on detail and functionality, what you just described, that really came because you went into architecture,
Yes.
not the other way around.
My mom have an OCD. Everything has to be perfect. The way everything is set is supposed to function properly. I never saw her point of view. It's just I thought my mom was a little, in the right term, she just had an OCD. But when I got to architecture, I saw her point of view. I started becoming more my mother than myself. So I had to figure out to find myself. And when I started learning history, architectural history, I started relating to them. For example, Frangeri said, I'm a modernist, decoration is a sin. I always hated too much decoration, big furnitures in the house. I loved simplicity. But simplicity was not easy to achieve. And trying to learn how to be simple in life, the interior designs, the exterior of it, the structure, brought out the best in me.
It's funny, we were going to spend this episode talking about some of your influences, some of the more famous names. Even me, not really having a background in architecture, I've heard of Frank Gehry, of some of the other people we're going to talk about, Frank Lloyd Wright, and so on. So let's start with Frank Gehry. I mean, what exactly is your understanding of him and his influence, and why is he such a big name? And then if we can relate this somehow to Ethiopia and the influence that it might have on architects here.
It was a big name because he was a famous architect. The way his design worked was so elegant and so structural, and everything has to be, if it's a grid line, everything has to have a grid line, a parallel line, and vertical lines. It was more relatable for me because I saw myself in him. I was so in love with him. Like, I have this saying in my house that our teacher said, an architect must know something about everything. If it's medicine, hotels, environmental, and anything you have to design, you have to be relatable. You have to know something about it to talk about it with people who have no education about architecture or any design. Most people in Ethiopia, if you see it, for me, for example, if I design any house and my neighbor sees it and he loves it and he brings an architect and I want this house to be made for me like the same way. He doesn't let his imagination go wild, and he doesn't let the architects go anywhere he doesn't want to. He's just rigid and focused on the same thing. And I feel like our generation, especially in Ethiopia, we're more focused in the foreign culture that's actually influencing us than focusing on our. We have a beautiful tradition, beautiful culture, but we don't want to embrace that.
So you're saying it's more important now to highlight Ethiopianness rather than trying to import any kind of okay.
I'm not saying like importing is a bad thing. Like, we're learning a lot from them.
No, but the emphasis should be more on Ethiopianness at this given time.
Exactly.
Right?
Like, even the clothes, the cultures, our clothes are more expensive.
Right. So how do you adapt someone like you say you have this powerful connection with Frank Gehry and with the way he sees the world? How do you adapt that into your own, given that he's an external influence, a foreign influence, while still emphasizing the Ethiopian approach?
I adapted it more with his perspective in architecture and Frank Lloyd's perspective.
Frank Lloyd Wright?
Yeah, okay. Frank Lloyd Wright. He focused on humanity. Like, if there's a tree in the middle of your house, he doesn't break it down. He designed over it, around it. It's still alive.
Right.
It gives life to the house. Not with the furnitures or the structure, more with the nature. All
right, so organics or naturalism. Don't try to disrupt the kind of natural.
The nature, but nowadays we're disrupting everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We destroyed the entire forest to build a railroad or a simple house, but we don't focus on the things we lose. It's going to be like 20, 50 years, 100 years from now. But somewhere in that time, I hope and wish that we'll actually achieve something that we are great for. Ethiopia and have a great city, a great culture, and in our designs in our houses, anybody can come and he doesn't see anything of our belongings, where we came from, how we live, how we choose to live. When we were learning in history of architecture, I'd have 4 semesters. The 3 semesters were all about the ancient one, because I'm modern, international architecture. The 4 was Ethiopian architecture. It was a small chapter because we have nothing to say. And even those chapters, the things we learned about our culture, our history, it was written with foreign people.
Right. So we don't have a connection
with ourselves.
To ourselves that we can then apply to architecture. But isn't that in a sense there's a potential there for someone like you, this young generation of people who are passionate, who are influenced by the Frank Gehrys, Frank Lloyd Wrights, who are informed, but who want to. The fact that chapter hasn't been written, it's up to people like you to write it at that point, right?
Exactly. But you can see the economy, like, you have to make a living right now. Like, we have to, when we graduated, when we were learning in school, everything was limitless. We were not bound to anything. Our imagination goes wild. We design everything we want. It's just we have to make sure everything has to have proper lines, symmetrics, and everything. But after that, we were never limited. When we go out of college, when we go to the real world, it sucks. It's hard. We go to some office. We do what we are told of. We don't design. We don't structure anything.
There's a lot
And
of
it's the
creativity
same.
built
No.
into the curriculum.
There is no creativity
Right,
when it
there's a
comes
lack
to
of
work.
it,
Yeah.
I get you. I
And
get what you're
you
saying.
cannot say
I think
anything.
a lot of educational fields in this country, you know, where everybody just sort of falls in line and does, you know, this is the liberal, this is the socialist. Everything's very pedantic. Your teacher tells you what to do. You follow the, you know, there's very little, in contrast to the American way, which is obsessed with, you know, have it your way, you know, your own creative or critical, like empowering you and making you confident. Here, it's everybody, you just kind of fall in line with what you do, and that kind of stifles anybody being inventive or creative or, you know what I mean, kind of writing that next chapter, as you were just
Don't you think that actually helped them?
in America?
Yeah.
Compared to, yeah, I think with that which is creative or innovative or people feeling empowered as a young child. Now, sometimes it goes a little too far, right? Where people are a little too coddled or a little too. But yeah, no, I think especially with something like architecture, or something that requires that creativity or that kind of that willingness to go out in your own way. Yeah, I think we would agree.
When I was here in school, my earlier education was in Indian National School. The curriculum was from Indian government, so it was not. We were not learning even Amharic. I started learning Amharic when I was in 6th grade. That's not okay. I was living here. I was living with Ethiopian people. I was speaking the language, but I don't know how to write it, how to read it, or anything.
And it's a little pointless to start teaching a language in 6th grade.
Exactly.
When the person has already been exposed to it, it's like, okay, now I'm going to learn my own language that
They were forced to teach us.
In school, they had a curriculum change in 6th grade.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay.
The problem was, the thing is, when we were in school, in our early ages, some of my friends loved sports. So they were more focused on sports. I have a friend, he is a graphics designer now. When we were in 3rd grade and 4th grade, there was a AP Biology, AP English for good and, you know, advanced placements. He was more into graphics and sketches and arts, and they pushed him to that. He was more at his place, at his elements. And that actually influenced him now to be a graphics designer. In the government schools, we have to learn every language, every subjects, and Amharic and English. When we finished high school and we take our test and we go to college, we don't know what we want to be.
Right.
Most of us.
And often you are assigned.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you're in the matric system. First of all, in some systems, if you do the matric here, you have to decide what you're going to do with the rest of your life or what fields you're going to generally at a very, very young age. Or in high school, or even if you're forced to, and we all are, when you're in college, when you're 20, 21, you look back when you're in your 30s and go, what the hell did I know to make a massive decision like that at 20, let alone, 15, 16.
Yeah.
But then, people get assigned to, I mean, this is obviously a pet peeve of mine, this is why we're talking about education on this station, but like, you're assigned to go to some town where you have no connection, or, you're and be in public university there. You're assigned to. I have a friend here who studied geology, and I'm like, who wanted to study geology? It's just like, well, they made me. They assigned me because we need a certain amount of geologists. I'm sorry, if people don't have any kind of choice in what they're going to learn, then how do you expect them to learn or to be? You know what I mean? How do you are kind of depleting human resources there. And then finally, when it comes to language, I mean. You know what I mean? When it's not consistent, what language, and this is a problem we have because of the fact that we're multinational, and also we're never colonized, and that we have limitations in terms of resources. But like, yeah, if we have these different languages, it's either going to be a political issue or it's going to be a pedagogical one because we're not immersed in it, and so we kind of have this hodgepodge in our language policy in public schools.
Yeah, but I understand when it comes to but when it comes to government schools, most people doesn't afford private colleges.
Right.
So when they go to college, their family can't afford it, so they go to government colleges and they learn whatever they're assigned. Mm-hmm. When it comes to architecture, you can apply to be an architect. You take a test. If you fail that test, you cannot learn like civil engineering or construction management, electrical engineering. You have to be an urban design student. Mm-hmm. That's not your choice.
Which is funny. So I mean, I feel this because I study English literature as well as history, and people who study English or Amharic literature, it's like they were bad students, so they were made to study that stuff that doesn't matter. Yeah. Which is, I mean, first of all, you're not valorizing that student, right? That doesn't help them. And secondly, what are you saying about the arts and literature? Oh, we're just going to throw the students here who who weren't smart enough to do something like really valuable, like science and technology. You know what I mean? Like it's this weird hierarchy where, like, you know, the good students go to the important subjects, and the bad students go, as if all of these subjects aren't important, right? And as if all of us aren't strong in different areas, and that's the way it's supposed to be. No, but there's some need for reform.
If you don't believe somebody they can actually do something, they're not going to do it.
No, of course not.
Yeah, if you believe in me, or my family believe, like, Feryal, you can do this. You want to be an architect? Okay, you can go and get it. If you want to be a doctor, you can do it.
Right. You need that environment that affirms you.
Yeah.
Like, this is also why, like, I think this has to do with why certain groups of people, certain races, or certain genders, they tend to do better than others. Or you know what I mean? It's from a young age you are surrounded by images of people who have succeeded, who look like you.
Yeah.
And if you're from a wealthy family, or if you're from an educated family, you have role models, but you also and you have advantages educationally, but you also just generally are in an environment that reinforces the possibility that you'll be successful. That's a supportive one. You know, that's part of your conditioning. But it's also, you know, a lot of it has to do with interests. And that's why we're doing a station called Ras Temari, right? Yeah. People learn on their own. As a teacher, you are there to, in my view, teach a man to fish rather than give a man to fish, right? Because if I convey to you as a young person your interest in something like architecture, and plant that seed, and just by telling you a few things about Geary or Franco or whatever, and it captures your imagination, maybe years later, then you decide you're interested in architecture, and then you go on and learn, you know, thousands more, you know, pieces of information. But that's what the teacher really did to change your life, was plant that seed of interest, right? So.
True, but for I can guarantee you, like, most of educated people, like in our age, 70% top, are not doing their job. Like, I'm an architect, but I'm not working in an architecture firm.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm working in marketing. That was actually a side class for me. Mm-hmm. I was not interested in being in a hotel industry or in the hospitality or any of it.
That's a lot of people's story here now. And in the States, I think for a long time, and might be even more now, it's like 75% of people in the workforce, their bachelor's degrees, their undergraduate education had absolutely nothing to do with what they ended up doing. But that's all the more reason you should study what you want to learn, right? Rather than, well, I have to study this because I have to make money in this or that field. That's generally not how it works anymore anyway.
It's just, for me, to people who's actually listening to this, I know it's difficult. It's hard to get out of your element, or to feel like disappointed your parents or your environment, even your neighbors. Like, everybody have that their point of view to say, like, this person's daughter learned this, but she's doing that. This son, he have an architecture degree or an engineering degree, but he's working in this department. Whatever makes you happy, you have to pursue it. What was that saying? Like, if you love your job, you never work a day in your life?
Find something you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. It is so true. That is really the goal. I mean, why would you want to spend 40, 50 years, you know, working 9 hours a day, like, dedicate your life to doing anything other than what you love and what you're good at? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. Honestly, I think I'd rather live on the street than be in that, cooped up in that kind of world. You know, working life is hard enough, but yeah, it makes it much easier when you're actually doing something you love and that you're good at.
Yeah. I asked a friend of mine a few days ago, like, what's your plan the next 5 years or 10 years? What he said to me was so sad for me to grasp, but we can actually relate to it. He said, I already graduated, I'm doing my job, I'm going to get a house, I'm going to get a car, I'm going to get married, have kids, and then provide for my kids. Mm-hmm. That's not life, that's survival. It's just surviving, you're not living. It's
also following somebody else's script. I mean, life is not a script, right?
Family script.
Of course, he's entitled to make whatever choices in his life. I'm not going to judge anybody, but I personally would not want to follow a script, because you will find one way or another that life doesn't follow that script, even if you want to follow it, and that's, you're just setting yourself up for.
When you listen to them, the more they talk about, like, their future plans, it's not just planned to them. Like, they've been saying it's repeatedly.
Right.
Like, it felt like a force, like record.
Right, playing a record over. And you also, I mean, when you have those kinds of expectations and they're external, because you can't control those things, I mean, a lot of unhappiness comes from unmet expectations, right? So you are kind of setting yourself up for disappointment, because even if you get all those things, you might find at the end that, well, actually, things are still somewhat difficult. But we're now straying. I wanted to get back to what you talked about. You are not currently practicing architecture.
Yeah.
You're now down the field of marketing. You had some thoughts about the disruptions to the industry that you actually work in, that you were expressing earlier. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The hotel industry, when I started working in the hotel industry, my first job was a receptionist. When I was a receptionist, I didn't have a degree, or I was just learning a diploma at National Aviation College as a front office and supervisor. But I started meeting a lot of people. The industry was fun and entertaining. You meet a lot of people. You take a lot of perspective from every other people you see. The more I learned, the more it was interesting. When I go to work, I actually get eager to get to work. I don't want to go home, because I spend most of my day enjoying my work. The more I learned, it was how liberating. The hotel industry, the staffs, they're not just co-workers. They're friends, they're family. They support each other.
So you really enjoyed what you were doing?
Yeah, I do.
And then what has happened to that industry now?
Well, when COVID hit, it hit every industry. But the hotel and the tourism industry, it was hit hard.
More than anyone
More than
else.
anything,
Possibly transportation, a couple of others. But hospitality, tourism, of course.
Exactly. But when that happened, a lot of people lost their jobs. Not because of a choice, because they were forced to leave without pay. And that actually it didn't affect me much, because I live with my mother. I don't have to pay rent, utility, or food, or anything. I just quit my job and I started spending my savings. But other people, they have kids to raise, a house to pay rent and everything. And that affected them, and they couldn't get a job because nobody was hiring. The owners, the hotel industry was not hiring because there was nothing to give. The revenue was 80%, 90% occupied. When COVID hit, it was 20%, 10%. And even that, there were mostly like pilots or travel agents that couldn't go back to their country. So what they wanted was a discount on their rooms. So the less they pay, the less there is a service charge. That means no service charge, no payday, nothing. Mostly people spend their monthly allowance and their pay and transportation or meal. There is no savings, there's no for recreational purposes or anything. And even now, it's still affecting us. People don't hire. Even if they hire in the hotel industry, the pay is low. The people are not happy because there is nothing. When it comes to line staffs, the pay is not as you expected. When people say, I work in the hotel, it doesn't pay well. They want the service charge.
Right.
To get the service charge, there has to be people staying in the hotel. There has to be an events, meetings, or any other purpose the hotel can actually offer.
Right.
But it's always not occupied. It's always vacant. That means there's no work. And most people have been working in the hotel industry for 10, 15 years. And those people didn't have education, but they have the experience. When they get out of the hotel industry, they don't have papers. The only thing they have is experience. And now they have young people who have a degree in the hotel management, the tourism management. They get more offers without any experience. That's actually decreasing the incomes because they don't know how to approach guests, how to get people to come to your hotels, or how to show the industry in a better view. Either it's the marketing can be social medias or media and what do you call it? Advertising. And the media advertising, they couldn't do it because they don't have any work experience. The hotel industries were actually pushing the staffs to have education, but they have been working for a long time. The only thing they know is work, not learning. We don't upgrade ourselves. We have a degree, let's just go and work. We don't want to get our masters or like other courses, short courses, to upgrade ourselves to be competitional. We're not competitional enough. We're young. We can do anything we want. Like we live today, we can spend today and tomorrow, let's worry about tomorrow. That doesn't work. And people doesn't actually see that thing right now. What we see right now is the smiley faces. People are, how's work? Everything is good. It's nice and everything, but it's sad.
So as a result of this situation that you're encountering personally, and that a lot of people are encountering, are you trying to get back into architecture? I mean, you did tell me about another major influence of yours, a female architect named
Zahadid.
Zahadid.
Yeah, the
Okay,
Hadid.
tell me about her a little bit and why she's an influence on you.
The Hadid was, she died, like she was 65 when she died.
Mm-hmm.
She was strong-willed. She doesn't take no for an answer. Her structure talks more about her. Like when you do a design, sometimes you have to explain what it is, how you did it, why you did it. Her structure talks. Anybody who doesn't have any concept about architecture or any of the engineering industry, they can appreciate her work. Everything was so liberating, and find the words, like you're a teacher, right?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, you are a teacher.
Yeah.
And your students can ask about you. If I ask your students about you, the way they talk about it, either they're very passionate about it or they have something negative to say about you. I couldn't find anything negative to say about Zahadid because she was a female role model for me.
What's her style? Like, what's her, would you consider a modernist, or what exactly is
she? She was more focused in the international designs.
Mm-hmm.
She's a modernist.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how to.
So she kind of escapes categorization.
Yeah,
like she's very original.
Me, yeah,
in that sense.
she's.
Okay.
Truth to say, most of them are original.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own structure. They have their own signature moves when it comes to the architecture industry. But the Hadid, for me, she have this point of view, the way she sees things, the way her lines talk more about her than anything she can say by herself. But for me to see that kind of impact in our city, in Ethiopian standard, we're a developing country. We haven't reached there yet. The prefabricated designs, we cannot do that. Even if we're doing, it's economically impossible for us. So, in the architectural industry, especially now, we learned the thing we learned in school and the thing we face in the real world are so different, like it's hard to explain it. We get all this knowledge, all this education about the architects who were before us, like from the ancient to the Greek, from the Roman architecture, from the international, the modern, and everything we see, we want to apply it when we go out. But there's limitation. There's client limitation, company limitation, and you have this budget you have to meet. Everything limits you. The structure limits you. We don't get original. We just do what we are told to. And for most architects who are working now as an architect, it's actually breaking them one by one. After some point, you're going to see an architect like, design me a house. Sure, how many rooms? What's this land space? Do you want a parking? Do you want a greenery area? Or it's just studio you're designing? They're just limited. They don't have life in their eyes, including me. I mean, I don't practice architecture in working environment, but I do interior designs and some easy structural for around my neighborhood. But still, it's more limited and it's, what do you say it? Unoriginal. It's just what I do is what I've learned in school. Nothing original about that. Do you have any point of view about it?
Yeah, I mean, that is unfortunate. I mean, it sounds like this woman that you look up to, somebody might use the term avant-garde, like the avant-garde, right?
Yeah.
Like before the garde comes, these are usually artists who are really on the frontier, who are really anticipating the new thing, or who escape categorization. And for you, my understanding is from hearing you talk about this, that you're looking for originality, creativity, and sort of pushing the limits or escaping these boxes, these categorizations. But it also, going back to what you were saying before, since one of the themes that we're really exploring on here is the relationship between modern and traditional, and specifically Ethiopian and foreign, that you kind of, even though you have these foreign influences, that you want to bring this back to. So I would ask you, how do we adapt that which is Ethiopian, like a uniquely Ethiopian paradigm, as you were expressing before, to this field, to architecture? Like, how do you envision that happening?
In my perspective, I feel like you have to own it first. You have to be proud of your tradition, your culture, and who you are as a person. Because me being Ethiopian, it's in my blood. When people ask me, I'll say I'm an Ethiopian. When you come to my house, when you see my culture, my designs, the things I own, you see and from where I came from, who I am as a person. And well, I'm Adari. I'm from Harar.
Right.
And every Adari people, you can go to their place. There's this house called Madabit. That tells more about us and of our culture, our tradition, our little souvenirs we keep in the house about who we are or where we came from. Might be our clothes, the food we eat, the way we talk, our language, the way we approach people. You can go to an Oromo people's house and you see there some thing that says, oh, they're Oromo, from their things. Turning that into an architectural perspective, it's difficult because we have to learn how to own it. Right. We wear this clothes that's foreign from us. We don't wear our clothes because we feel uncomfortable, like people have their eyes on us. Right. We feel like we're in the spotlight.
So you're talking about really incorporating some of these, like, uniquely, either it's unique to a particular religion or ethnic group, to design, to architecture. It's funny, the first time we met, we talked about this. I mentioned to you that I was raised in a 95% Muslim country in Senegal, right? Even though I was raised Orthodox, and the architecture you were talking about, like the sand, the foundations, and so on, because a lot of it is built on sand over there. Yeah. But because of the climate, even, right? Like all the woodsy stuff that I would see in the Northeast, that didn't exist over there. You can't do that, right? So everything is sort of cement and
shallow
you have
foundations, all of them.
Right, and then you have these Islamic, especially the windows and the framing. You always had that sort of Islamic kind of style incorporated into it, and it's the kind of thing that might be able to do in the context of what you were expressing before, of being, a certain ethnic or religious minority in Ethiopia.
True. The way we were raised was, when I told you about madhab baits, it have layers.
Right.
The lower layer, we sit there. When we eat food, when we drink, when we're hanging out with family, it's not like a dining table. And the higher one is for older people. It teaches us respect and to know who's the boss of the house, how to handle them, how to respect them. They have to eat before we do. And that's not being Ethiopian. I don't know what is. For our culture, we believe in our... What's happening? Okay. For our culture, it's more of who we are, where we came from, how we do it. And you can come, anybody who doesn't know anybody's culture, they can go to their place and see something and they say, oh, you guys are this, you guys are that. Okay, I understand. And that's turning that into a house or a structure or even the way we live our life. It's going to take time, like I said. The more we accept who we are, the more we are more intact to our culture and traditions, the more we can actually be who we were supposed to be. We can achieve that limit that was actually bound to us when we were kids, when our mothers, fathers, or grandparents has put us through. And architecture for me and culture, it's not different for me, it's the same. My culture, the way I dress, the way I eat, the way how I put things in my house, it says more about me than my outside perspective of life or friends or any of it. And for our
ethnic group or religion or nation?
Religion wise, it's not different, is it? When it comes to culture, you can be an Amara person, you can be an Orthodox or a Muslim or any other religion, but still the culture is still the same. You can show it in your house. You can show it the way you talk, the way you act, or anything. So religion for me never affected me more in the designs. Maybe for the Muslims and the Christians, for the prayer areas, you have to do specific designs for them. But other than that, it's still the same. And in that, you can add Ethiopian design more to it. I've always wanted to travel the world, but I always wanted to start in Ethiopia. I wanted to see every nooks and crannies of Ethiopia,
because to see within the country, absolutely.
And when I was working in the hotel industry, when the tourism people come to our hotel, the way they talk, I feel so envious of them. They see a lot more than we know.
Within our country.
Exactly. We don't know anything about our country.
Everybody wants to get out, as if there isn't plenty of stuff to see.
True.
Within a few hours.
And even when you read and see it, it's not the same thing. Reading about Samin Tarara and actually going and experiencing it is not the same. When I read it, it was so beautiful. It was so adventurous. When I experienced it, it was so hard. I couldn't talk. I couldn't walk properly. It was hard. But at the end, when I got to the top, it was beautiful.
Thank you for that. I think that's a good place to end. It was very inspiring. So we hope to have you on. Come back, and this is Feryal, our good friend, who was nice enough to come make some time to be here with us, and we hope to have other people who are interested and passionate in this way and eloquent in this way about this field come on as well. I think that's where we'll leave it at that. So thanks everybody for listening. You're listening to Ras Temari Radio, Offense Necessary, where we discuss everything about politics.